Chapter 5. Mistaken Identity. "Okay," Bruce said. "Chase that pony, but stay high enough off the ground so we don't run into anything. And keep circling back so you won't lose him." "Maybe you'd better take over," Nancy suggested, worried. "No," was the reply. "You can do it. Just remember what you've learned." Nancy kept her eyes on the racing Palomino and its rider, watching the terrain ahead at the same time. The trail was a winding one. Once the animal disappeared into a forest area. Nancy circled the spot, hoping the rider would come out. He did not, but in an area of sparse trees she saw him. He was still galloping. Bruce remarked, "That's some pony. He must have lungs like a giant bellows." A few minutes later, Nancy and Bruce saw the horse and its rider appear from among the trees. The animal, now showing signs of exhaustion, was well under control. Finally, he slowed down to a walk and then stopped. To Nancy's delight, the spot was in a large grassy section. She could land safely. With some coaching from Bruce, the girl flyer brought the plane in on an excellent approach. She taxied near the animal as quietly as possible, watching carefully to see if he were going to spook again. The rider was reassuring his mount, stroking the pony's neck and speaking to him in soothing tones. Although the animal was still trembling a bit, he stood still, watching intently as the plane approached. Nancy and Bruce climbed out of the craft and walked forward. "Hi," said Bruce. He looked to Nancy to give him some signal as to what to say next to this stranger. The girl smiled at the rider. "I'm sorry I spooked your pony. I thought he was the one that was stolen from the Hamilton ranch, but I was wrong." This animal did not have the same markings as Pop Hamilton's prize mount. "You mean Major?" the man said. "Then you know about the theft?" Nancy asked. The rider nodded and introduced himself as Howard Stanton, a government agent. He showed his credentials, then said he was trying to track down Major and several other horses and ponies that had been stolen. "But I'm afraid all of them are far away from here now," he said. "Horse thieves get their stolen animals out of the state and sell them as fast as they can." After Nancy and Bruce were in the air again, she asked, "Did you agree with Mr. Stanton that thieves take stolen animals out of the state as quickly as possible?" Bruce said he did. "It would seem foolish to keep them around here because they could be located easily." Nancy did not entirely agree. "I don't know about all the stolen horses, but I have a strong hunch that Major is hidden somewhere close to the Hamilton ranch." Bruce smiled. "Which means that you would like to continue the search, combining it with your flying lesson." "Exactly," Nancy told him. As the young detective practiced, she and Bruce scanned the ground and used the binoculars every once in a while. There was no sign of Major or any other pony. "Too bad," Nancy said. She was very disappointed at their failure to pick up any clues. Finally, pupil and instructor headed home. An hour later, when Nancy reached the Hamilton ranch, she found that Bess and George had been busy preparing for their pack trip on horseback the following day. George said, "Bess and I will use the ponies we've been riding, Nancy, but you'll have to choose one. You'd better do it now so there won't be any delay in the morning." As the girls approached the corral, Bess whispered, "That rough cowboy, Ben Rowell, is in charge. I can't stand him." Rowell did not speak to the girls, just glared at them. Nancy said, "I'd like to try out a pony to use in the ride tomorrow. Which one is gentle?" "None of 'em when they get mad," Ben replied. He made no suggestion. First, Nancy chose a lovely, sensitive-looking gray mare who responded immediately to her voice. Just as they were becoming friends, a beautiful 2-month-old gray colt trotted around the corner of the corral and started nursing. "Oh," Nancy exclaimed, So this lovely baby belongs to you? What a magnificent pair you are. You think you're so smart, Ben snarled. You're no cowgirl. You can't take a nursing mother away from her colt. Nancy blushed and stammered that she had just realized the gray had a colt. She picked another mare, which had kind eyes. That's Daisy D, George told her. She's nice. You'll love riding her. All right, Nancy said. I'll try her. Where do I find a saddle and blanket? The cowboy frowned at her, then said grudgingly, Oh, I'll do it. He led Daisy D into the stable. A few minutes later, he brought out the pony. Nancy nodded her approval and vaulted into the saddle. She rode around the corral twice and was just about to say, She'll be fine, when Daisy D reared up on her hind legs, nearly throwing her rider off. Nancy tried her best to calm the pony, who came down on the ground with a thud, then began to run wildly. A few seconds later, Daisy D jumped over the fence and bolted. Nancy talked soothingly to the pony, while seesawing on the reins until she was afraid she would cut the animal's mouth. Finally, with a loud snort, Daisy D stopped. Nancy quickly dismounted and held the pony still. Patting the animal's neck, she said, You're all right, old girl. You're not hurt. Nancy herself was not so sure of the latter statement. Bess and George rushed up, and she said to them, Take off the saddle and blanket. I suspect there's something underneath the blanket. The girls did so, and Bess cried out, There's a big burr under the blanket. George added, No wonder she sunfished. Those prickles went right into her flesh. The poor pony. Bess was furious. I'm sure Ben Rowell put that burr under the blanket on purpose. How mean can a person get? I'm going to find out if he's responsible, Nancy declared. She stalked back toward the corral. Ben was not in sight. She hurried into the barn, but the cowboy was not there either. By this time, George had led Daisy D up to the barn so that some soothing antiseptic salve could be put over the punctured flesh on her back. Bess was even more upset about the incident than the other girls. When she found out Ben was not around, she went to look for Pete, the man in charge of the corral. After Bess told Pete what had happened, he exclaimed, There's no excuse for this. Every person who saddles a horse is supposed to inspect blankets and saddles carefully so nothing harmful will be put on a pony's back. Bess looked at him. We don't know why, but we think that Ben Rowell put the burr there on purpose. Pete yelled loudly for Ben, and finally the cowboy came. Pete showed him the burr and the puncture on the pony's back. How do you explain this? He asked sternly. Ben looked at the ground, then said, I don't have to explain nothing. You explain, said Pete, or you're all through at Hamilton Ranch. Instead of replying, Ben Rowell turned and looked at Nancy. Glaring at her with anger in his eyes, he cried out, I hate the city brand of cowgirl who tries to fly planes and goes around nosing into everybody's business to solve mysteries. I'll get even with you for making me lose my job. He waved a fist at her. End of chapter 5.